It was back when I was a teenager that I first started fishing the waters on this farm, and it's amazing how things change, because back then this was one of the biggest herds in the area with 160 cows, and now with 100 more than that it's one of the smallest. And it's also a fact that there used to be 5 dairy farms along this valley, and now this is the only one as well. But the march of progress, the march of time, I suppose. Still, chatting to the farm manager, things seem to be going well, and he was just on his way to get the cows in for milking, and he was telling me that the maize harvest was scheduled for later in the day. So I took a little wander down through the cows, which I think nowadays come under the umbrella term of British black and whites, although there are a few crossbreds and a few jerseys kicking around in amongst the others. And some things don't change, because although they use a quad to get the cows in, there are some of it still done by dogs. And after making sure that all the cows were heading in the right direction, a dog came to round me up, see if I fancied going to the milking parlour as well, which I didn't. So I made my excuses and got down to the pond. And this pond has changed a lot over the years as well. At various times it's had lots of fish, not very many fish, a few different species, and sometimes just one species. And I think at the moment it's in one of those lulls where there's just a few old carp loitering around. But after fighting my way through the undergrowth, I found a couple. And for this type of fishing, I like to keep things simple, even by my standards. And so I was using my trusty old Farlow's holdfast rod, Richard Carter aerial gem centerpin, loaded with 6-pound line, and nothing more complicated than a size 10 hook on the end with a chunk of crust. And it's just a very simple and very enjoyable way of fishing. Now, some things don't change, and me getting ahead of myself is one of those things, because for the few fish that are in here, I've got way too carried away baiting up, and as a result of which all the freebies had drifted in under cover, and the carp were quite happily mopping up the bread in the snags, making it impossible to fish for them. So rather than get too wound up, I thought I'd pop over and watch some of the maize harvest. And this is ensiled for winter feed, and again, it's incredible how things have changed over the decades, and a job that would have taken days or weeks is now done in a matter of hours with these huge great foragers and massive tractors as standard. I'm not sure how many tons these trailers hold, but it's a significant amount. It makes short work of the ground that needed to be covered, and this has all been put on top of grass silage that was harvested earlier in the season by a giant yellow Tonka toy of a machine that you can see at the back with a huge rake on the front. And I wouldn't even like to guess what sort of horsepower, let alone cost, a machine like that is. But it was certainly doing a very good job very quickly. And after having seen a little bit of that, I made my excuses and left, because one job that is still done by hand is putting tyres on the clamp, and I didn't want to get roped into that, so I hightailed it back down to the pond. And by this time the carp had cleared up most of the freebies that had drifted undercover and were starting to move out into open water, which meant I could at least try and put a bait to them, and more importantly stand a chance of landing one if it actually took. But it was slow going. I didn't introduce way too much bait to begin with, is the truth of it. There was a fish coming out, and I knocked the camera in the excitement of approaching the bait. But I managed to hook it, and we were off and away. Now, a few people have asked why it is that I fish with the tackle and the style that I fish, and the truth is it's because of farm ponds like this. Like many young anglers of my generation, I started off put a lot of effort into catching a fish, and then trying to catch lots of fish, which typically were inch-long roach and rudd, before trying to catch bigger and bigger fish. And my angling journey very much paralleled the rise in day ticket fisheries that made bigger fish more and more accessible, and I'd travel further and further afield, always fishing, or predominantly fishing, with one rod, but the best tackle I could get at the time, and fishing for bigger and bigger fish, and I did okay. But situations change and real life gets in the way, and about 20 years ago I found myself where I had neither the money nor the time to justify keep chasing bigger fish, so I reverted to fishing smaller club waters and the old farm ponds. But I realised it would be a fairly pointless task with the modern tackle that I'd acquired, or it would remove the challenge, because I'd be able to stand anywhere on a pond and cast anywhere, and none of the fish in these waters were going to come close to the size of fish that I'd got accustomed to catching. So I thought I'd start fishing with centrepins, because if you can only cast 10 yards, you've got to be within 10 yards of the fish to catch it, and that brings a whole different element to your angling. And through that I got increasingly into older style rods, fibre tubes and canes, and in many ways it's just made my fishing far more rewarding. I still do go out occasionally and target big fish, but for the most part I'm quite happy to be fishing in a way that I enjoy and allows me to fish for fish that look like this, with no names and no history, or plenty of history but no catch history. No one's going to come along from the next swim and say, I had that last week and it was 2 pounds heavier, or that's jumbo single whatever. And it just allows me to enjoy my fishing. I probably prioritise that, enjoying my fishing, over the size of fish, and being able to fish in the way that I want to fish, rather than worrying too much about pounds and ounces and how many. And by the time I'd finished, the maize was in, the cows were settled down for the evening, and here's to the next 4 decades.